This is how to hire, train, and keep great event staff. This is also geared for, if you're just getting started. So this presentation is for solo operators who are ready to scale. Anyone tired of doing it all? Many of us have been there. Um, People scared to hand things off. I certainly can relate to that as an entrepreneur. That's something I've had to work on and grow on. And people burned by bad hires in the past. And so I haven't experienced the bad hire thing at this point yet, but I could understand how that would, hiring can be really a pain and bad things can come from it. So the goal is really share actionable tips for developing a repeatable hiring system. Again, if you have suggestions, all that stuff, feel free to raise your hand, comment. I'd love to hear what other people are doing, what's working for people, and then also share how CheckCherry can help keep you organized. And so I think what we'll do, Matt, is instead of interjecting kind of the features, I think at the end we'll just cover some things that CheckCherry does on the staff side. So maybe you can take care of that part, and me and I've got a list of a few things and so on, but that's what I was thinking. So again, I need your help. Chat, raise your hand. Let me know if you have something, or let Matt know, and we'll have a dialogue and so on. So I guess one of the questions is like, why hire anyone, right? It can be a pain. I think of a lot of things that you do as an entrepreneur are front loaded with the work. So the first hire is a lot more work than the second hire because there's a lot of things you got to set up and all that stuff. But I think the reason is pretty simple. It's going to lock, some freedom for your time. It's going to help you scale, so you'll be able to service more than one event at one time, bigger events, that type of thing, and overall deliver a better client experience, right? If it's just one person, it's going to limit you in what you can do in the business and so on. And so I think that's, at the end of the day, really what it's about is just freedom, scaling up, growing the business, better client experience, all that stuff. Another thing that I don't cover in this presentation, this is really about hiring people that'll work at the event, is really what I'm talking about. We also have, CheckCherry's customers also hire people that do design work, or hey, I've got somebody that just does sales. I've got a VA who helps me manage and follow up on leads and stuff like that. So that's not covered, but those are also things, and maybe a future topic if this goes well, to do. So anybody have a story about them, scaling, whatever? I'd love to hear it. Kind of growing up to that first hire. That would be cool. I'd love to hear more about that. So we certainly, we see that all the time. People start with just one person and grow over time with us. It's really awesome to see that. So, you've decided you're ready to hire, okay, now what? And so I think the first thing that I would think about is kind of where to find people. And so one idea, the job boards, Indeed, Handshake. I've never heard of Handshake. Matt, have you heard of Handshake by any chance? It does
No, I
exist.
haven't.
Yeah, Craigslist is another. I feel like a lot of these, like Craigslist in some cities is more popular than others, and so it's really going to be regional. So whatever's popular on the job boards, you could post a job rec that says, "Hey, I'm looking for somebody to work weekends," and give some basic information about what you're looking for. Groups, Facebook groups, college boards, local event networks. Those are all great, opportunities. I know a lot of people also do their personal network and they work with family, and that can be something that can be good as well. I think it depends on your family dynamics on that one. But certainly I could see, family working out, or, relatives, that type of thing, as people to help out. And kind of what I've seen is a lot of times, students and hospitality, people with experience in hospitality, or people that are already kind of in the freelance slash gig work mentality, or have other gigs, that type of thing. They also make for great hires. So I like this part, which is just basically, this idea to like always be hiring, kind of like build a bench, not just one hire, and I think one of the things that is helpful is you're going to want to be able to spread events out to people. So if you just, let's say it's like two people working, and one person gets all the events, and then I need that third person, they're not going to be as motivated, or they're not going to be stick around. It's not going to mean much, right, to them if they can't take it to kind of go out of their way. So I think kind of trying to find a way to have some stability and hire out and spread out events to more than just one or two people or kind of more than you need, and to always be in this process of looking for people that you think could be a fit. Um, and so one of the things you want to do is define the qualifications. So it's not just about finding the best person, it's about finding the right fit for the job. And so understanding the job is really important. So when we were on hiring at Chuck Cherry, we did a hire in customer support and a hire in marketing, and those are two very different roles. And we think we ended up with really good spots. But those are different personality types, if you will, that would, you know, be better fits in those roles. So you're gonna want to define that. And then also your baseline stuff. So I think this goes for like any job almost, right? So are you reliable? Are you punctual? Are you a good communicator? Can you follow directions? Can you lift gear? Do you have availability? So this is weekend availability because I know most events are on weekends, but does your availability line up? I mean, if you could be a perfect fit, but if availability doesn't line up, like it's not even worth it. So I mean, just I think if you can get to kind of the deal breakers faster, it just saves everybody time. It's a good thing. I think these, the reliability and somebody who's punctual and a good communicator are a lot harder to teach as somebody who's kind of employing them, basically. So I think this is something that they should be bringing to the table. Then you're going to want role specific stuff. So I've got a few different verticals in here. So photo booth, are you comfortable with tech and, in presentation, some level of, getting people to use the booth and, presentable, that type of thing. Obviously, if you're a DJ, do you have, music sense and very important mic confidence. I mean, I think it's tough to find great DJs. I know that. And then bartenders, are you efficient? Do you know your recipes? And, can you be a responsible service? Do you have the appropriate licenses? I think, it depends. A lot of this stuff will also depend on the state, local area that you're operating in. So, you got your role specific skills and role specific skills. And then I think the bonus stuff is just like prior event experience and hospitality. So, social skills, whatever it is that you're looking for, stuff that they've already done, which is not required. Um, in my opinion, it's a mistake to just hire somebody who's not a good fit in other areas, but oh, they've done the job before, they must be able to do it. I won't have to put any work in training them, is what you might think. And I think it can work, but I also think you be wary of that because it's okay to train people, and I would say you should be hiring for character and training for skill. And I think what that, if you do that right, it means you basically got to be good at training. Um, and there's not a lot in this presentation, and I'd be curious to hear what people are doing for training. I've got a little bit because, quite frankly, Matt and I don't run a photo booth, bartending, DJ, or event service company. We talk to a lot of customers. Obviously, we hire for our business, but this is not an area of our strength to, the training for event services, basically. Um, so if you have anything you can add to that, I'd love to hear, the hiring funnel. So this is kind of just a stab at kind of what you might do, which is to say, hey, let me take 5 minutes, have a phone call. What might you do on that phone call? You're probably looking to see like, did they show up on time? Like, what are those non-negotiable, basics? Did they show up on time? Can you have a good conversation with them? Does it flow well? Is there is it vibe? Is it a personal connection? That type of thing. I think you can learn a lot in a 5 minute call. I think the time on this would depend on how many people you're hiring. Quite frankly, I would, it depends on how many, but if you have a few people, I mean, 5 minutes is not much time at all. If you're hiring for 4 people, I think putting 15 minutes in there is no problem. Taking an hour of your day should be no problem. But if it's a lot more, and if you know that people are not going to show or whatever it may be, I mean, you might want to shorten it up. I think 5 minutes, you can learn a lot. And then the next step would be to have a video call, right? Makes it so easy, and I think with the video call, what do you learn? Like, are they presentable? Like, did they show up on time? Were they prepared? That type of stuff. And then a next step would be basically to say, okay, why don't you come shadow a shift and just kind of see how we do it. Um, I think there's also a component which is often forgotten about, which is it's both sides have to see it's a fit, right? You might find somebody, and I think it's totally reasonable. They're like, hey, man, this is not for me, and the sooner you can get to that, the better, I would think. So a paid shadow shift. So if you do proper training, right? I mean, I think you get to a situation where you do that shadow and then you kind of like, hey, let them lead. And then you're just going to kind of be there to watch and then kind of just go on their own a little bit more and train them more. SOPs are mentioned here. It stands for standard operating procedures. Have checklists for things, that type of stuff. CheckCherry has a checklist feature that's really helpful in these situations. I also think it's important not to go overkill on stuff like checklists, especially when you're just getting started. Just set some common sense things in there, make it easy, set your team up for success, basically, is what I would say. And I think a lot of that has to do with, just how you are as a manager and how, are you, if your game's not completely together, if this is your first go, be flexible, right? And learn as you go. But I think also, just setting clear expectations about how they should dress and how they should handle gear, that type of stuff. So, um, some legal and compliance basics. So I think one of the things that is frustrating with hiring is like it's not just as easy as just cutting somebody a check, right? And so you'll see consistently people wonder, are they an employee or are they a contractor? And so if they're an employee, you've got to send W-2 documents to the government. And if they're a contractor, it's 1099. And it's my understanding, and again, depending, this is mainly US stuff, but you want to check the local or regional laws of your area. But most event hires don't meet the IRS standards for 1099 contractors. And basically, the IRS looks at control and not job title. And if you're controlling where and how to work, they're almost always W-2. So and I think with an event, I mean, you're specifically telling them where, when, and how to work. And so that's pretty clear. And so you're going to have a W-2. So what's the downside of not doing the W-2 and misclassifying people? I think that I don't know specifically, but I think there's extra payroll taxes. So you could be caught paying back payroll taxes for misclassification, stuff like that. So it's just something. I'm a fan of trying to get this stuff right from the start because once you kind of start fudging it, it's never a good time basically to start setting all this stuff up. And so, look into stuff like we use Gusto at CheckCherry for our payroll. It's worked out great. We like them. It's pretty easy. It's relatively reasonably priced. There are a lot of different payroll options. Customers have asked CheckCherry to put into payroll at some point. We haven't gotten there yet, but we should have an answer at some point, I think. It seems to fit within the scope of what we do. But the world of having the payroll done and paying a little money for them to do it's not that bad, basically. So definitely hire a service to help you with the W-2 stuff. Um, and the W-2 1099 stuff gets complicated. I mean, there's situations where if you're, hiring another company, that's probably a 1099 situation. But again, speak with somebody in your area. Yeah,
Yeah, I would just add on to that too, that, white labeling where you're hiring another company that does photo booth services, you're probably safer with that type of thing than a 1099
yeah.
that's
Yep.
just working for you and just doing your events and things like that.
So some other things to think about. And I know a lot of times we'll have customers that they seem overly concerned that somebody that they're going to hire and train up is going to become their competitor. And quite frankly, there's nothing you can do much to prevent that. I mean, I think it's part of other than I would say be a great place to work. There's a lot of other things that happen in a business other than just showing up and collecting a check, obviously. All the stuff that Check Cherry helps with before the event, after the event. There's just tons of things, even like, what we're talking about today and attending webinars like this. Um, but non-competes, it's my understanding, they're really restricted or banned in a lot of US states. And so it's not really something that I think is viable. But more what's used are things like non-solicitation agreements, which prevent staff from stealing clients or coworkers for a certain amount of time, or and confidentiality agreements. And so you probably use both of these things to say like, hey, look, you can go start your own business at any time. I mean, that is what I mean. You can't prevent people from working, but can't steal my clients, and you can't steal my coworkers. You can't basically steal my business. And so, um, again, these are things that I think are more reasonable to put into place and have people sign. Also, I've learned that it's best to have people sign stuff when they start working, as opposed to, oh, I mean, if you don't have this in place, you might want to have everybody sign. But there's always a rift when you have existing employees sign a new agreement or something like that. And I think if you do that, I think just be really upfront and fair and clear about why you're doing it. Um, again, always consult your legal counsel, somebody familiar with your local laws. So a lot of this stuff is based in the US, but state laws vary, as we've mentioned in the non-competes. But have a good counsel that you can reach out to. It's worth it. Somebody in your area, somebody you trust. Um, the other thing you can do is basically have stuff like, equipment agreements. You can protect your equipment by having them sign like a gear responsibility agreement. And just if they acknowledge they've been trained properly and to report issues immediately, and that they'll be responsible for negligence, which is not, negligence is not the normal wear and tear, to be clear. And it's really not about charging people, and making, this isn't a profit center for the business. It's basically just don't abuse the equipment and think you're going to get away with it. It's my last shift, whatever. I'm not going to do with it, that type of stuff. I think that can be really helpful if you don't have that. So, um, I think that pay and retention. This is really, one, you want to be somebody who's reasonable, obviously, and you want to find the right people, make sure it's a good fit. But really, at the end of the day, most are coming, I would say, if not all, for the money. And so, this is going to vary by region, but you can do hourly or per event. We've seen that. And so it varies by industry, it varies by, but you're 20, $30 an hour, 200, $250 per event. There are pros and cons to those. Just keep in mind that your pay rates are a signal, right? If you don't pay well, not gonna get good people, and they're not gonna value the job as much. And so I think you got to find a way to charge clients enough that you can pay a fair rate, something that people are excited about earning, basically, and that they want to keep the job, or keep it, it's worth it. So, flat versus hourly. I mean, I'd be curious to see if people have experiences in this. I would say that I would probably do an hourly situation, because one, there's travel. And so I think travel comes into play and other things. And so, but I know people do flat rate. Flat rate's very easy to bake into your cost, so to speak. So it's kind of easier to think about. But if events run over, setup time's longer, whatever it is. On the flip side, if they're very efficient about setup and that stuff, I mean, maybe it's good. But I think hourly probably is better. I'd be curious to hear thoughts from people. And I think incentives can really work. And I'm a fan of this stuff. It doesn't take much, and you don't need to do all these, but I think introducing some of these can really be helpful in aligning goals. So, for example, a referral bonus. So, basically 50, $100 if you find, okay, if you can bring a new team member, to works 3+ events, I can give you a bonus, $100 bonus, something like that. Depends on what it's worth to you. Maybe it's more, I don't know. But using your existing tenant network, especially imagine if you had like students working for you that you really liked, that could be a really nice place, and they're obviously going to graduate. But if you kind of always have that going, I could see that as really working well. Um, I've seen, people do the raises, so it's like, hey, you're going to start at a certain rate, and then after so many events, you basically get more money, and then after even more events, you're at more money per hour. And so what this type of thing does is it's going to incentivize people, or gives the people incentive to stick with you, and then rewards them. And then of course, you imagine after 20 events, you're going to know a lot more, right? And do things. So I think it's, baking something like that in makes a lot of sense as well. And then basically, a reliability bonus, $100 a quarter for, perfect attendance, or not, not canceling, whatever, not having to find a replacement. Obviously not no shows. I suppose I should take that out, but, just kind of being reliable, basically. And, I think also there's some really important things about rate praising people in public and correcting in private. You don't want to shame people, that type of thing. You want to be somebody who's good to work with, right? I mean, it's not, these are, in my mind, really simple things, but I think in the heat of the moment, it can be easy to criticize somebody in public, but try to correct them in private. Giving people opportunities. I think that pay stuff is interesting, and that it gives people an opportunity to earn more, but also like new, if you have a lot of different types of events, maybe there's more simple and more complex and they pay different. I could see that happening. Um, Pay your people on time. I mean, I think that's really important. Be quick to pay them. In all likelihood, I guess some events are post, pay, they're net 30 or whatever, corporate and school. But I think the vast majority are prepay. Be sure to pay them on time. And then invite them into and share feedback, celebrate wins, that type of thing. Like invite them into the company, make them feel like they're part of the team. I think that's also really important to do. Oh, I got this in here again. It's really important. Pay does send a signal on it, Matt. Okay. So in closing, basically, great entrepreneurs don't just work hard, build teams that make customers happy. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to grow. But I think that if you can get yourself in a position where you have help, it frees up time to do other things, work on the business, grow the business, that type of thing, if you're not doing every event. So I would encourage people to consider it, and that type of thing. So that's where that's at. And so finally, we do have features in CheckJerry that help with staff. And I think maybe we can pop open the Forever Events demo account and kind of poke around. But I think, we have staff accounts where you can assign staff. They can get notifications. I think if you set your staff up for success when it comes to knowing where to be and reminders, and, they can log into the app and see the address, there you can have private notes. The events can have, the venues or places in CheckJerry can have notes to tell them things so they know where, a layout of things for setting up. And we just make it easy for them. And we also have a feature where you can send an email to everybody and they can claim a booking, they can assign themselves, or they can request to work the booking. And I think that type of thing is really helpful, because if you're spreading out the events, you can kind of see who's interested, who's eager to work, and then how do you kind of go about that and filling it up. So do we have any chats or questions or anything?
Yeah, not a lot of chats. Somebody asked for a referral link, so I dropped CheckJerry's referral link in there. So feel free to use that, or if anybody else has a link, feel free to share that. One question I have for you: any tips for writing a good job description? Because I think you've done that
I think that's
for
good.
both of the hires we had, and I think you did a good job on
Yeah.
that.
I think that what I would start with is the type of person that you're looking for, and then kind of go from there. And so, obviously, with CheckJerry, we had two, marketing is somebody who's probably more extroverted and more creative and more, that type of thing. And then the support, it's okay if you probably want to be more introverted and be super able to dig down into things, that type of stuff. And then I think make it relatable, and you want to make your company seem friendly and approachable, right? You're not a big corporation. Don't act like it. We don't need to have you're not applying to a big corporation, where you put your resume into the black hole and maybe you get back, a response. I think you have something that's really personable, just say, hey, look, I'm looking for help. Here's the situation. I would highly encourage people to put the pay rate in there. Highly encouraged, because that's going to help people feel like this guy, this person's a straight shooter. They know what they're looking for. I know what I'm getting out of it. Everything, the expectations, just to weed out, hey, I need weekend availability, this type of stuff. I think that would be really good.
And any tips on knowing how much to pay somebody? How do you
I don't know.
how might one yeah.
It's a tough question. So I think what I would do is, I would kind of just start with something, I guess it depends on your region, but I would start with something that you could afford, and that you're willing to give up and throw it out there. And then can you, what kind of margin do you need on an event if you're not going there? I think maybe that's also, if you're going to make $900 at an event, and it's going to cost you, not much else, I guess, using equipment and some other stuff, but not, how much can you afford to pay somebody and still make a healthy profit? So I would do stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, I've learned that training and turnover cost a lot, and that you're probably better off paying a little bit more, and when I say a little bit more, I mean even an extra dollar more, $2, I mean, like, whatever it is, it does add up, and people do notice that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks. Well, if anybody else has questions, feel free to chat or just unmute your.
Hello guys.
Hey.
Yeah, this is Adi. Thanks so
Hey,
much.
Adi.
I like that you guys put this on, even though it has nothing to really do with Check Cherry, but you guys trying to help us and support us.
Yeah, this is
That's
different.
why we've
Yeah.
been here. I think I've been here 3, 4 years now, and I'm staying strong. So I appreciate you guys. I just want to touch something that I mentioned like 2 or 3 calls ago, whereby when you're trying to send a message and you including photos, it keep crashing. So like let's say there's what I call an header
Yeah.
model whereby I'm trying to like build after like they fill out the form when they receive my message back, I'm trying to do like some stylistic stuff whereby they can see what they're getting. Hopefully it helps to convert them easily. But every time I had like a photos or insert, it just crashed. And I didn't know.
Did you do a Zoom with Matt by any chance? I think that was the
No,
I
no.
think that's basically, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, it's you're not the only person to report this,
Okay.
but we can't reproduce it. And not everybody's experiencing it.
Hmm.
So the thing to
Yeah.
do
So
is
what I'll
schedule
do.
a Zoom with Matt so he can basically see and
Okay.
debug, more or less, because we haven't
I'll
been
go
able to
ahead
do.
and put my
There's
my
Matt.
calendar link
Yeah.
in.
Okay.
Pick a
Thank you.
time,
Yeah.
share the screen, let him look at it. Yeah, that's the way to go
Be
about it.
helpful
But
to
yeah,
see like here and because yeah, we've tried, different browsers, different plugins. We just haven't been able
yeah,
to
Sam can't do it, Matt can't do it. I haven't tried actually, but I think if you can
reach out.
recreate it, sorry,
Yes.
Yeah.
and then we can take a look and then look at the inspector and stuff like that and see what
Mhm.
kind of errors there are. But that would be awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will try and schedule a time with you. Thank you so much, guys. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Hey, do you hire people?
Yes. Because it's like 80/20. If I go on LinkedIn, for every time I hire one person, 5 might be trash, and like there'll be that one person that will just be with me for like
Yeah.
a whole year. I have one lady, she's been with me close for a year now, and like the good thing for her is she owns a photography business, even though she doesn't know much about it. And I was or still technically a corporate photographer, so I give her points. So I think maybe one of the reasons, and she's just looking for like something on the side. For
Yep.
anybody hiring, I would suggest look for moms, like stay at home moms that are just looking for some reason to get out on Saturday.
I
Seriously,
love
they are
it.
the best.
They're gonna be
Like they might
reliable.
not be able to
Yeah.
pick things easily. So if you have like 360, forget it. None of the ladies will do the 360 for you. I learned, but like just all like a mom that maybe she's like an empty nester. She just because they love parties, they love weddings, they want to be there.
Right. You get
So
invited.
that's the
Yeah.
way I sell it to them, and they're getting paid. And like I always tell them, no, hey, eat, have fun, because I like I tell people if you're not enjoying what you're doing, just don't do it. So I try to let them like enjoy it, and like I show up and like even sometimes I go beyond and above to go pick the things myself or set up for them, because I'd rather go set up for them, get things in place than worried about people not showing up.
I love it.
It's all
And
about you just have to look for what works for you. It's not the best, but I'll
well, I
take
think,
that over.
and I back to the job description, maybe in the job description, you're like, hey, this role in the past has been a great fit for students, stay-at-home moms, empty nesters, people who want to go to, like you could be like that and let them know, hey, this is kind of anyway, there's a comment here that says thanks, Audie. So awesome.
Yeah,
See, I love
definitely.
that. No, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, you guys are out there doing it, so I think that's a great tip.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think
and
that's real
another
common where
tip.
the vast majority of the responses you get, most of them are not going to be good. It's kind of the same people applying to everything. So, but definitely, there's those needles in the haystack for sure.
Yeah, and another tip, and I hope nobody in Charlotte is listening because they don't want to, they shouldn't steal my idea. Go to popbookings.com. They are mostly like people that are like in hotel, not hotel management, but like it's like a more of like a hospitality business and they're just looking for gigs.
I love it.
Even when I'm going to like Raleigh or I'm going to somewhere different, I just book people there and there's chances some of them will like you and they'll be like, oh, let me know whenever you're around or if you need more. And as long as you can check them on time, that's another good way to always find someone because they're already in the space. Some of them have done photo booth before, or they've waited, for a golf event or something. That's what they do. So they know how to approach people. You just have to show them how to use the tools,
Right.
which is not really hard. Like, in all honesty, you just pressing the button. It's not like complicated. It's the setup that might be tough, but
Yeah.
everybody have
But
what works for them. So.
right. Love that. Love that. He's giving out his secrets. Yeah, and so, well, I think there's a lot of, and I think that's one of the things is that, you do learn your little tricks, over time, and figure out kind of what works. And it's interesting that he's not worried about the training much at all, Matt. You know that. He's
Mhm.
like, no, it's pretty easy on the training side, and if they've done it before, um, but I think obviously you need people to show up.
Yeah.
Anybody on the DJ side that does hiring, and what do you look for, or mobile bartending, or other event services? I'd be kind of curious, what people look for, or is it, I think obviously it's easier to hire a photo booth than DJ, I would assume, right, an attendant, because um, you know most people don't want to get on the mic, I suppose, and kind of, MC a whole situation, wedding, that type of thing. But and the bartender, I mean, obviously that's another challenge. So yeah, let's take a look at some of these features. I like that. So I guess one is, so just to be clear, you can assign a staff member. Oh yeah, go ahead, Matt. You know what you're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, any staff that are, in your town, of course, you can assign them to your bookings. One of the things that Judd mentioned is your SOPs or your operating procedures. And I think it's worth, we'll kind of talk about some of the features that Chet Cherry allows for, but it's worth really just kind of sitting down and saying, like, how do I want this to work? Are my staff going to be taking payments at the event? If the customer needs to add an extra hour, who's going to do that? Do I trust my attendant to know the pricing, to do things like that? Or do I want to kind of keep things more private and not show them, how much, what the event pricing breakdown is and things like that. So with Check Cherry, when you assign somebody to a booking, they'll by default they'll get an email. You can also uh, have reminders go out to your staff. I think we do that by default, but you can certainly have, a whole series of email reminders, text message reminders if you want, things like that. Just kind of reminding them, hey, your booking is coming up, things like that. Um, but yeah, once you assign them, they'll get that email. And then if I go ahead and impersonate this staff, using that impersonate feature, you can see what your staff sees as well. So if you want to know, like, hey, I'm curious, what is it that my staff can see? What can they see on this event? Do they have pricing permissions? Do they have you know, access to, what do they have access to see? Use that impersonate feature. It really helps a lot for getting an idea of what they can see. But let me switch back to the admin account. And so as far as actually setting up your staff, you finally have that first hire. You're going to come and do that under the user accounts section. And you're just going to add a new user, put their name, their email, basically, whatever information you want to include there. And the important thing is you want to check this staff box. You probably don't want to give them admin access, unless they're, you know, kind of helping you run the business. But you probably do want to give them the staff access. And the big one that impacts most things is this extended permissions. Uh, this is going to control whether they can see pricing, see messages, make changes to the booking, things like that. And so if you kind of want to give somebody, autonomy to answer all of the customer's questions, to make changes, things like that, you're going to go ahead and check that box. If you don't want to do that, you want to keep things kind of private. You don't want them to know how much you're making on an event. You're going to want to make sure that you leave that unchecked. This see all bookings feature, where this comes in is if you have a certain kind of staff that, maybe they don't need to see the pricing, but they do need to see everything on the calendar. So that could be, maybe somebody that's helping you with the scheduling,
Yeah.
things like that. And, or even just you want, maybe you just want your staff to see everything that's going on, even if they don't necessarily have access to pricing and stuff like that. And then we do have a sales role. That's going to be a little bit different. That's more of for if you've got, if you're at the point where you've got somebody helping you with lead follow-up, with sending proposals, with things like that, you're going to want to check that sales box. Typically that's not going to be your first hire. You're going to be fairly, from what we see, typically people have quite a few, at least a number of staff running events and doing things like that before they bring on somebody to do sales. Obviously, every business is different, but typically that's not going to be your first hire. We see, generally the person that starts the business is kind of the one that's generating those sales and sending out proposals initially. And then we have this option here about, do you want your customers to see the staff's email and phone? Probably less important than the other features, but basically, do you, it might be helpful to leave that checked if you want your customers to be able to call the staff, email them, things like that. If you want to keep it private, you can just uncheck that. And once you create that staff member, let's go ahead and create one here.
Good old John Smith.
Uh-huh.
Oh, he already exists. He's already in there.
It's in there. Oh, John Smith.
And he's in there too.
Yeah.
You've been here before.
So once you create a user, you'll see this easy send staff login instructions button. And so you can go ahead and send them an email that's going to have all the details. And while we're here, we can take a quick look at what that looks like. You can edit these if you want to, but by default, that's going to include, let's look at the preview. That's just going to include, you've been invited to include to our staff portal to log into your account. Just click the link below and set your password. Once you've set up your account, you can visit the login link to log in on the web or download app link to install the Cherry app on your mobile device. And you can come in and customize that, that language if you want. If you want to have kind of a little onboarding thing, you can. But generally it's, this default works pretty well for people. And Cherry has, we're primarily on the web. Your customers are booking you through the web. Probably most of the time our admins are using Cherry on the web. But the mobile app is great, especially for kind of when you're on the go and for your staff. For your staff, particularly if this is just something they're doing occasionally, they don't want to remember login and remember websites and things like that. So the app is great for them to download, install, and then once they're logged in, it'll keep them logged in. And then they'll get push notifications as well when when you assign them to a new booking as well. So, if somebody, booking comes in, you assign your new John Smith person to it, they'll get a push notification on the app saying, hey, just a reminder, or, hey, you've been assigned to this event. So that can be real helpful as well. Another thing that's helpful for staff is, let's go ahead and impersonate one again. So staff can also sync their calendar to, if they use like a Google Calendar or Apple Calendar, things like that, they can subscribe to their events on that calendar as well. So if I go to, probably the easiest way when they log in is to hit the subscribe to calendar link. And it's going to give them a link that they can add to their Google or, whatever calendar they use. They can, there's some instructions for how they can do that. And that's a great way to make sure that, whatever they use, they'll have all of your events on there. So, so kind of going back to those SOPs or those, kind of standard operating procedures, that's the kind of stuff you want to decide up front. Like, okay, what do I want my staff to do? If you want them to subscribe to the calendar, just maybe include, instructions with that saying, hey, once you sign in, subscribe to the calendar and things like that. So, so it's real helpful to just kind of, keep them, let them know what they need to do when they're first coming on. And the good thing about, with the calendar, with the mobile app, with the website, all of it, as things change, they're always going to have the latest information. I know some people like to do like printouts and things like that, which is fine. But the downside of anything you print out is it can get out of date. It can, start to become stale as changes are made. People can lose the paper, stuff like that. So with if they're syncing their calendar, if they're getting emails, stuff like that, they're going to have all that information right there. The latest version of it. Go back to the admin. So yeah, so I don't know.
Well, I think the
What else
check,
is on that list?
mention the
Yeah,
checklist side real quick. So I think
yeah.
that's also something which makes it really easy, like an equipment checklist.
Mm-hmm.
So, when a booking comes in, you can have an equipment checklist for that package
Yeah,
automatically
let's get
created.
the booking side of things first. So every booking has this checklists tab at the top. And what you'll see is, that has a bunch of items that are automatically assigned to it, or that, in this case, we're assigned to it. You can, of course, add new things. If I come to this new test and, add something, do something, I
And I think
can specifically assign somebody, or I can just, everybody that has access to the event is going to be able to see these, or all of your staff. So, so that's,
And I
so,
think most staff use the iPhone app, just as a reminder,
mm,
that is out there.
yeah.
And, you can open that up and get to the place and make sure you check off the boxes, or maybe
Yeah.
have a setup checklist
Mhm.
for an event, where they can go through and just kind of check all the boxes as they do it. Super easy. Um,
Yeah.
but to me, this is like setting people up for success, especially if you're new.
Mhm. And then, so that's if, that's on each booking. And like I say, you can manually add stuff if you want, but probably more easily is to come into these checklist templates. And what you can do here is set things that automatically get applied to your bookings as they come in. So, if you have some kind of, if you want to just have a reminder to bring a backdrop, you can include that and it'll automatically show up on all of your bookings as they come in. And then you can come in to your packages and say, hey, I just want to do that on my photo booth ones or on certain photo booth packages. And that way, your DJ packages or something else aren't going to have that reminder. Similarly, you can do add-ons, tied to backdrops, tied to other things in Cherry
And
as
we
well.
have a full support video
Yeah.
on checklists that you can find through that little search box also. I mean, that's probably
Yeah.
worth mentioning, but I mean, there's a lot of support material. And you can always chat with us at any time.
Yeah, and I think the main ways we see checklists being useful, it can be kind of a static like list of things to bring, or it can be more for like reminders, like, hey, like after the event, these are the things we do, or before the event, these are the things
Yeah.
we do. And again, that kind of just makes it easy to make sure your staff are all on the same page, that once you've been doing it forever, you'll kind of remember everything yourself, just without thinking about it. But somebody coming on, they're not
Yeah,
gonna they're not gonna
exactly.
you're gonna forget stuff. So, and as Jen mentioned, under the support section, there's lots of videos. The video tutorials are helpful. You can also just go to the search at the top, and if you type something like checklists, you'll see support videos in here as well. So that can be helpful as well.
And then any other, oh, here's a comment. Angela says, can staff add a post event notes on the event?
So what they can do, a couple ways you can do like post-event stuff. So the private notes section, is a great way to kind of communicate with staff. Anything that's private, basically that's private to, that's not going to be shown to the client. So, you can add notes, things like that as needed. You know, setup times, pickup times at, 8 a.m., whatever that is. And that'll show up, the staff will be able to see that. They'll be able to see who added it, things like that. You can have your staff leave notes after the fact too, if that's helpful. You can also use the questionnaires feature. So with questionnaires, primarily those are aimed at clients, client questionnaires, but you can also use it for staff as well. So you could have, if we have an example here.
I forgot we even had this, Matt. You know that?
Yeah. You can do, because I know some people do that. Yeah, we should make an example
We
for
should
that.
make a template.
Yeah. But in the same way that you can have your customers have a survey, you could do something similar with your staff and say, hey, how did things go? Give them stars or drop downs or text boxes, whatever you want to kind of ask them. Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea for us to add a template. So
Yeah, it's a
probably
great question. Yep. And I think it really depends on, do you want something more structured, or is a text
Mhm.
area that's real simple that you just put a couple of notes in is fine? This is going to be a more structured situation.
Yeah,
And
and on these questionnaires, you'd of course want to say, hey, yes, the staff can see it. No, the clients can't.
and you what remember the other settings that can you do at post event? Is
Oh
that
yeah, yep. And so with this other settings section, you can say basically control when this questionnaire shows up. So, do you always show it, which is the default? Do you only want to show it before the booking or only show it after the booking? And so before the booking would be, things like your planning forms, your planning questionnaires, song lists if you're doing music planning, things like that. After would be maybe a customer survey, a staff
yeah,
follow
stuff.
up.
Yeah. Yep. So there's your options. But in comment says, I like the 5-star idea. Very easy. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends on what you, I mean, I think, we all have different personalities as entrepreneurs, but I think kind of start simple and get complex when required, I
Yeah.
think, is what I would say. Um, there's no need to make things complex when you're not sure if it even matters, I guess, but that being said, yeah, you can do the 5 stars, and that's pretty quick and easy. If that's what you're looking for. I like it. Um,
It's
okay,
another feature
Jake.
that can be helpful. So under packages, if you click on one of the services, like if I click on the photo booth service, we do have some staff settings in here as well. You can label what you call them, photo booth attendants, stuff like that. But more interestingly, there's a setting down here that how should staff be assigned to this event? And the default is, do not automatically assign staff. We assume that by default, most people assign their own staff. But we do have a couple of features that can be useful. One of them is to allow staff to claim bookings. So say, a booking comes in, you can have a message go out to your staff, or you can just, tell them to check in periodically, however you kind of want to do things. But when a booking comes in, they can click that email and claim it themselves or go within their account and claim it. You can also just let them request it. And so that way, you kick it out and, maybe 5 people request it and then you assign it to one of them. For real small operators, you might want to, if somebody handles all of your photo booths or, all of your DJ or something, you can automatically assign somebody as well. And then we do have way less common than the other ones, but we do have a setting to allow the customers to choose their own staff as well. And where that's useful is say you've got a bunch of like DJs and they're kind of better at different things, certain ones are good for weddings, certain ones are good for other things. You can have profiles in Chet Cherry and then the customer can choose their own staff as well.
Yeah, like pick your talent kind of
Yep,
situation. Yeah.
exactly. And so if you're doing a lot of white labeling or things like that, that can be useful as well. If you've got kind of a network of people you sub out to or white
And then I
label.
think one last area to cover is with staff, which could be helpful, is there is a note section on places. So, most people forget about this feature,
Yeah.
but these will automatically populate, by the way. And when you've done a work or there's a booking with one of these, you can basically go in and there are some times where you're going to have specific instructions for a venue that are not going to change, so you can have public and private notes. And so you put in the private notes, stuff like that. You can also, if I remember right, do attachments right there in the bottom right. So I've seen people do layouts and instructions and stuff like that. So something else. And I think what's cool about that is it really just helps set your staff up for success, right? If a venue has certain things about it and it's just real easy for them to see it and know and all that stuff, it's going to be easier to work with you, better service, all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of a one-time, every time, the venue never changes for the venue. Yeah. So,
Mhm. Yeah, this will show up directly on the booking. That
love
way,
it.
that's right there. And this will also show up in the mobile app as well. So, so if they're on site, they should see it there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, most staff, again, use the mobile app. I think that's really
Mhm.
common that they're using the mobile app and so on. So, well, are there any other questions? We miss anything, Matt? What do you think? Sure, we missed
This
something.
is a check unrelated to check
Oh,
cherry,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm curious, one of the barriers we're thinking about is, we're hiring people mainly right now for events that we can't do, but how do you deal with your equipment and like timing and getting it to the people who are the staff running your events?
My
Um,
under, my understanding is most people have a pickup location. So the staff member is responsible to come pick it up at your location and then drive to the event. That's, I think, what I've seen most of the time. Um, I guess it depends on how far away it is, and there's some other specifics. But I think that is a common pattern where you have, whether it's your garage, a storage unit, or an office, that they come pick it up. And I think if you're one of the great moves is to have everything packaged up in a box slash bins, like all together. So they just pick it up, and take off, and then they come back and drop it off, that type of thing. I
I,
haven't heard many people do the drop off. Yeah, do you have other things to say?
just to add to it, because it's tough finding people. Another solution is because I don't know, for some reason, some people, car issue. I just put the equipment in the Uber or Lyft. I send it to them at the location. When they're
Oh,
done,
really?
oh,
Interesting.
I try to make it work. When
I
they're
would have.
done, I tell them, let me know when you're done. I send a lift down there. The lift pick up, drop it to my house or my garage place. Even sometimes I'll tell the lift guy if I'm not home, I'll open my garage remotely. I'll
I
tell him
love
I'll give you
it.
extra $5 tip. Put it, just dump it right here. And then
I
when I come,
love it.
because I have cameras everywhere, you can open remotely. Because I struggle with it when I was trying to scale. And like I couldn't find anybody to give me a tip or how they do it because I'm running most of my stuff from home. I'm fortunate to have a two garage system
Hmm.
whereby my lady has a home parking space, then my parking space is outside on the street. So everything else go into the second side.
Hmm.
So he's like, don't be discouraged. Get one of those the garage thing that is like the same thing. You can connect it to your phone, it's free. You can open and close it. You
Yeah,
have
Wi-Fi.
cameras everywhere. So
Mhm.
nobody's really looking forward to steal your thing because you can see everything going on. And like, because that's the only way like you can get to whether you're doing two, three events in a
Mhm.
weekend without really like killing yourself, you know? So
But
just
yeah, no, I love that. That's a
yeah,
great.
that's like
That's
my
a good
one
tip.
what
Yeah.
I do, because some people like maybe, oh, I don't have a car, I don't know how to get up. Like, just get to the work. Don't worry, I'll get the equipment to you while they're there. Yeah, it will cost you a little bit, but the good thing is I'd rather get that $900 and pay extra $200 than not getting it at all.
Yep,
So that's
making it
another
work.
way to look
Love
for
it.
it. Yeah.
Great addition.
Yeah, and it's great with all the, the smart cameras and locks and all that stuff. I mean, it just makes it so much easier than it was, when we were growing up. So yeah.
Love it. Great question.